Today I want to talk to you about something that sounds like a contradiction. The idea that our greatest weakness as a sector is also our greatest strength. To get there, I'm going to use a few concepts borrowed from operations management, economics, and a little bit of physics. Those topics in general are going to be efficacy versus efficiency, supply-driven versus demand-driven industries, just-in-time, lean management, Kanban, the efficiency paradox, oversized production assets, and local supply chains. And I'm going to ask you a question that I think every professional in this business should be able to proudly answer. How is it possible that during the pandemic, the powerful and modern sophisticated industries, like carmakers and many others, had to stop their production lines while the fresh produce sector not only kept working, but dealt with a spectacular surge in demand? The answer is not luck, it is a structure. And once you understand that, you'll never again let anyone look down on this business with a condescending smile. So let's get to it. I'm David Del Pino and this is Fresconomics. Welcome to the fresh produce business, a world where uncertainty is the only constant and volatility shapes every decision. Every day, remarkable people navigate this chaos with skill and courage. Join me as we explore the hidden logic of this industry to decode what others call unpredictable. In this sector, we work on a permanent roller coaster of emotions. When it isn't a wild production peak, we're facing a pest infestation or the weather decides to play its tricks on us precisely when we least expect it. In short, volatility isn't an occasional visitor in this business. It lives with us. And a few years ago, we faced a period of true exceptionality for which there was no instruction manual. The coronavirus, and of course the restrictions imposed by the various public authorities, pushed us to discover the professional and organizational limits of this industry. And we found out, under real pressure, exactly what we are made of. Time has passed, I know, but I still clearly remember it. The whole fresh produce sector was in permanent contact. The general tone was, let's say, one of vibrant, almost feverish activity. And after seeing what we were capable of, there was, why not admit it, a certain pride and even a quiet complacency. I remember one conversation particularly well. I was talking to a company manager and I said to him, "It's impressive, this sector is spectacular. What this industry is able to do is nothing short of miraculous. Farmers, packers, hauliers, everyone." And he answered me, "I just hope society and consumers know how to appreciate the effort and the humble commitment of so many people." So let me say it clearly. Here and now, as a standing tribute in this podcast, this is my permanent recognition to the many people who bring food to our tables. But beyond the gratitude, there is a question worth answering with our heads and not just with our hearts. What is so special about this sector that it can do what is impossible for others? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself how it was possible that powerful modern industries such as car making and so many others had to halt their production lines while the agri-food chain kept running? And not just running. On top of that, it successfully handled a spectacular increase in demand through the supermarket service channels. Empty pasta and rice shelves became the image of the moment. Yet, the fruit and vegetable aisle kept refilling day after day. The reason is this: our own weakness becomes our most resounding strength. When we face volatility, let me explain why and how. As I never tire of repeating in my articles and also in this podcast. The great difference of this industry is that it is an industry eminently defined by supply and not by demand. That single sentence carries almost everything that follows. In most consumer goods industries, demand is the queen of the chessboard. If demand for a particular, let's say, yogurt, rises by 10%, the factory ramps up. If demand, on the contrary, falls, the factory scales back. Production responds to the signal coming from the market. Yeah, simple, elegant, efficient. Now picture a pepper grower in Almeria or a strawberry farmer in Huelva. Can they ramp up because a supermarket projects a 15% rise of demand next month? Of course not. What is planted is planted. The crop cycle is a crop cycle. In our business, we work at operational efficacy thresholds based on production decisions taken at least a year earlier. Our products are grown in living plants, not in factories, with annual planting cycles, or more than that, with 3 to 5 years in the case of fruit trees. That only let us adapt to demand afterwards. Therefore, the processes have to be managed from the perspective of supply. The factory obeys the market, the farm obeys the seasons, the weather, and the biology of a living organism. And here is the point I want to underline. We are always facing one and the same business dilemma. The dilemma of efficacy against efficiency. Because our particular constraints, we are operationally effective. We get the desired results, well, more or less. The order goes out, the shelf is filled, but we are usually not very efficient in the textbook sense of minimizing resources. It's worth being precise here, because the two words can casually treat it as synonyms, but they are not. Efficacy is the ability to achieve the desired effect after an action, or many actions. Efficiency is the rational use of resources to achieve a goal, an objective, with the minimum means and time. An industry can be brilliantly effective and on paper look stubbornly inefficient. Ours is exactly that sector. In our world, everything that comes in, that is whatever is produced in the farms, must go out. That is be sold. In order to maximize results, since we cannot act on supply by stopping or slowing production in the farms in the short term, what we do instead is try to force demand to adapt to our production cycle. Through promotions, shifting prices, the tactical modification of product specifications, and so on. We don't turn down the tap because there is no tap. We bring more glasses to pour the water into. As a result of all of this, investments in production assets are vastly oversized in our industry because everything is planned to be able to cope with the crop's production peaks. The pack house, the lines, the cold storage, the labor shifts, all of it is scaled for the busiest week of the year. And therefore, for most of the season, those means of production are underused. That is clearly asset inefficiency, plain and simple. Worse still, the size of these production peaks is several times larger than the size of the demand peaks we serve. We built the stadium to handle the cup final, and then we play most of the season in front of a half-empty stands. This is the reality we face. And this is precisely why I say that our weakness becomes our strength. We work at fairly low production efficiency thresholds, yes, but operationally we are extremely effective because we are accustomed to managing production peaks 4 and 5 times higher than normal output. Our processes, in that sense, and our teams are capable of sustaining that production stress for a long period of time. The muscle that looks like flab during the quiet weeks is exactly the muscle that let us lift an enormous weight when the moment demands it. Think of it in physical terms. An industry optimized for a constant load is like a rigid steel beam. Superb under the precise stress it was designed for, but brittle the moment an unexpected force arrives from the wrong direction. Our sector is built more like a structure designed with a huge safety margin. Heavier, apparently wasteful, maybe over-engineered, but able to absorb a shock that would snap a linear design in two. Resilience and efficiency are very often opposing virtues. We long ago, and by necessity, chose flexibility and resilience. So it should come as no surprise that fresh product companies are capable of the impossible. And with these explanations, I don't want to take any merit away from the industry. Quite the opposite. I want to highlight that the sector is trained to do the impossible 2 or 3 times a year, each one on its own product and its own cycle of production. And there is an old stock phrase in this business that captures it perfectly. We can do the impossible immediately, but for miracles, you'll have to wait a little while. The impossible here means amending an order on the spot, reshuffling the packing schedule, adding shifts, working through the night, dispatching at once, and shallowing a natural production peak, all as routine. But there is more. To guarantee a reasonable level of service to customers, we also planned in excess on purpose so that the volatility of production does not jeopardize the supply programs we have committed to. You can think of this as a kind of a service hedging. We pay an insurance premium in the form of extra crop against the risk of nature of falling short. A demand-driven industry would call that surplus a sin. We call it market survival. All these contrast sharply with the situation of the manufacturing industry. Those are demand-driven industries, and they have spent decades applying highly efficient production processes like just-in-time, Kanban, lean management, and many others. They have spent decades cutting stocks and other problems in that Kanban terminology that they call waste. Muda, which is a Japanese term Toyota made famous. They control their investments, they outsource non-core activities, and their supply chains have become ever more globalized. And of course, the logic is impeccable. Right up until the supply of a single component coming from anywhere in the world, let's say China, stops and the whole factory grinds to a halt. Here lies a delicious irony. The very philosophy that makes those industries the envy of the business schools, minimal stock, perfect synchronization, zero slack, is precisely what made them fragile when the world stopped behaving as supposed. A system tuned for maximum efficiency under normal conditions has, almost by definition, removed every buffer that would help it survive abnormal times. The pandemic was brutal, real-world stress test, and the results surprised everyone except those of us who live inside this sector. In this respect, our sector, our industry, by comparison, has supply chains that are far more local. In the basic product, of course, which is the one grown in the farms and cannot be teleported from another continent. But also in most of the inputs and auxiliary elements, the great local agri-food clusters can supply with far less international dependence. Let's say fertilizers, agricultural plastics, packaging materials, and 1,000 of other needs. Geographic concentration, which the textbooks sometimes treat it as a limitation, turn out to be an impressive shock absorber. And on top of that, because of the volatility and unpredictability of production, we have grown used to having a plan B, a plan C, and a plan 1000. And if we don't have one ready, we improvise it on the spot. You know that. We try to keep recurrent, repeatable process running in our packing houses so that nothing ever stops. And naturally, our intermediate stocks and the various inputs are typically larger than those of the manufacturing industry. Redundancy in our world is not a failure of planning. It is actually the planning. There is a subtle danger lurking here, though. And I'd be dishonest not to mention it. None of this means that efficiency doesn't matter. Oh no. Or that the consultants from other industries are simply wrong. Not at all. There is a well-studied trap called the efficiency paradox. The more you fine-tune each individual process to its own maximum efficiency, the more inefficient the system as a whole becomes. Edge link. The grower chasing maximum productivity, the pack house chasing long standardized runs, the retailer chasing a constant supply, ends up creating its own little island of efficiency, a local optimum that quietly interferes with the optimum of the whole supply chain. So the lesson is not efficiency is bad, not at all. The lesson is that efficiency must be sought across the whole system at once, never link by link. Our resilience buys us the right to be in the game. Intelligent system-wide alignment is how we win it together. As a closing plea, I would like this to sink in. I would like to be able to boast permanently to society and to our customers about the professionalism and dedication of this sector. And I would like never again have to tell the typical consultant from outside our world, the one who asks his question with a faintly condescending look, that no, we are not inefficient. They arrive convinced that their playbook will deliver stratospheric improvements to our bottom line, precisely because they lack the basic understanding that our structure is not accidental. We are not here by accident. It is the rational answer to a problem they have never had to solve. Or rather, let's admit we are inefficient. It is because we need it to be very effective. Assuming, of course, that you'd still like to carry on eating fruits and vegetables every day. Let's see if between us all we can finally turn this weakness into a strength that is at last finally understood by everyone. Because the next time the world is crumbling, it will once again be the supposedly inefficient sector that keeps the food arriving quietly, stubbornly, even miraculously. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I invite you to subscribe to Fresconomics on your favorite platform. You can find me on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and even on YouTube. And remember to share it with others. Help me connect with the community of professionals in the fresh produce industry. Although it may take a while, I promise to respond to any questions, contributions, or suggestions you may send to web@daviddelpino.com. And of course, you can also visit my blog at daviddelpino.com, where you'll find out how to get a copy of the book Fresconomics, along with articles and additional content. Until next time, take care and try to enjoy this crazy business.